Oh, yeah, we got to overturn.
You're listening to the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit.
Is filmed on location with the men and women of law enforcement. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Anytime you could use the Cops intro, you do it. But I as somebody that grew up watching the show, I must say the cameramen, there must have been an insurance policy through the roof on those guys, especially during that era when they filmed in the city. Man, that must have been some job. Welcome, ladies.
Oh, I could imagine.
For sure. And they got a lot in those episodes, as we'll talk about tonight.
Oh, yes.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 222 of the Mike the New Haven podcast. If you haven't checked out the previous episode, that was last night, volume 31 of the Best of the Bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite. Hank Millay and Ray Seeley, previously featured for that miniseries, rejoined me as we did a special Q&A session, where we took questions from the chat and my email on all things fire service. So good chat with those guys. Hank, of course, former veteran of Rescue 1, Squad 288. Ray Seeley, a former veteran of Squad 270 and Squad 288 as well. So we go from that back to the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. We haven't done one of these in a while. The previous volume of this miniseries was with Big Joe Guerra, of course, a former housing rescue cop, of course, then into the NYPD. With a consolidation of housing emergency rescue. And for volume 22, we speak with tonight's guest. My next guest in both childhood and adulthood can be described as a barrio boy. And what better place to patrol than the place in which you're from, right? He started off in Harlem's notorious 2-6 precincts, one of the precincts covered by 2 truckers we'll discuss tonight. And he, like many of his era during that time when there was a lot of crime going down, was a worker. And that would serve him well for the Emergency Service Unit, where you need to be a worker. He joined that unit in 1986. He stayed until 2002. His tours were never dull, especially when you're considering the fact that he worked in Truck 2, Truck 3, and Truck 4 in that order. And that, for this volume 22 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, is Mr. Ray Ruiz. Ray, welcome. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And for those of you in the audience, I already put this disclaimer to Ray. I'm going to put it out. I'm waiting for game 1 of the Yankees to start. I have it in front of me here on mute. So if you see me at some point disgusted and looking like I want to tear my hair out, Garrett Cole's pitching, which means he's going to do something to aggravate me because he always does. So that's just a little warning out there for all of you. So I was saying...
The Rangers are playing tonight.
When the Rangers are playing tonight, too, they're playing Tampa, which I'm still not over. That don't even get me started on the Tampa Bay Lightning. So don't like them very much. But that said, as I mentioned, you grew up in Harlem. Take me through what it was like growing up in Harlem during that era.
I was born and raised in Spanish Harlem, Washington houses in 99th Street and 2nd Avenue, in the 2-3 precinct. My father passed away when I was 13. He was a pharmacist, and my mother, it was hard for her. She raised my sister and I, and we attended parochial school there, St. Francis de Sales Catholic school. I was an altar boy and in the choir. And after I graduated from there, I went to Aviation High School out in Long Island City. And then I joined the Navy in 73. Went in active duty from 73 to 76. I was stationed on the USS Forrestal. It was an aircraft carrier in Norfolk, Virginia. And I worked with nuclear weapons while I was in the Navy. Yes, mushroom cloud specialist.
So the hazmat course in STS must have been a walk in the park.
Oh, yeah. And I stayed in the reserves. And the one thing I did well while I was in the Navy, because we used to go on our 6-month deployments from March to September. So I used to tell my moms, send me the chief. So she was mail me the chief. And what I was doing was filing my applications while I was over in the Mediterranean. And then when we got back in September, I would be coming home on the weekends in October, November, just taking civil service exams. And originally I had filed in right before I went into the Navy. At that time, they had the height requirement, which was, I think, 5'8", and I'm 5'6". So the day we go down to Varick Street, go down there to get sworn in, and after the swearing in ceremony, they gave us boxed lunches, and we're waiting to take a flight up to Chicago, to Great Lakes, for boot camp. We're watching the 6 o'clock news with Roger Grimsby and Bill Butel.
Yep.
Eyewitness news. Roger Grimsby comes on. No more height requirement for the New York City Police Department. And I was like, don't. And I was like, darn, the Navy got me for 3 years now. So I went in. I didn't lose it. You know, I could have came home because they gave the test in December of 73. So, but it was a godsend because in 74, they had the layoffs. The city went bankrupt.
Right.
And as always, last hired, first fired. But I never lost interest, you know. And I took the fire department, transit police, and I got called by all of them. I got called by transit while I was in the academy. And then a year after I was on the job, I got called by the fire department. But I enjoyed what I was doing. When I was in boot camp, we never went to firefighting school because it was cold up there in December and everything was frozen. But so when I was in the reserves, they sent us down there to Norfolk, Virginia for firefighting training. And I had just filled out my paperwork for the fire department. I was going to send it in. I had taken the pictures. I was going to send it in that Monday. So, excuse me. We go to Virginia. We go into the trainer. We're all suited up. Now the instructor says, "You guys ready?" I said, "Okay." I was number one nozzle, right up there. They opened that hatch. That red dragon came out. I was like, and they're smacking me in back of the helmet. Turn the water on. Turn the water on. I said, oh, yeah. That's it. I have total respect for those guys for what they do going into those burning buildings. But I said, no.
Because that's the thing. A lot of guys will take the PD test and they'll do their time in the police department, but really what they want is the fire department. So since it counts with the pension all the same, as soon as the fire department calls them, off they go. But, listen, at least you knew. At least you didn't try to kid yourself into thinking you could do it. And listen, I've heard this before from them when they've been on the show for the Best of the Bravest. They give you guys all the kudos in the world because they couldn't do a lot of the tactical things or see themselves doing a lot of the tactical things that you guys wound up doing in the SU. Mm-hmm. So you were ready to get it right where you needed to be.
Yeah, and it's funny because my wife's cousin, he was in the fire department. I think he's retired now. He used to drive Garcia around the
Lou?
Fire Marshal.
Yeah, Lou Garcia. He was on the show. He's a friend of mine.
Yeah, he used to be his chauffeur. He worked with him.
Wow. All right. Small world. I literally a couple of weeks ago, Lou was just on the show. I kid you not. So yeah, it's a small world. And text me the guy's name later on. So I'll text Lou and see if he remembers him, which I'm sure he will. So getting on to the job, of course, you got called by transit. Housing was around back then too. But obviously most gals have said, even though they didn't mind transit or housing if they ended up there and they learned to love it, the main goal is the city PD and the NYPD. So in the academy, and I have the photo here, and while I pull it up, you can tell the story. I mean, you're coming in a unique background. You have the experience, obviously, in the Naval Academy, having gone through those 3 years in the Navy. Tell me about what the police academy was like from the standpoint of somebody who had gone through that academy, the similarities and the differences. Oh, this is STS. Yeah. There we go. This is the picture. Yeah,
that was after our Gun and Shield Day. Well, I was picked as the assistant company commander, being that I had military, and this guy right here, George Carrig, he was picked as a company sergeant. So it was like boot camp all over again. We muster out on the muster deck over there at the academy, at the old academy, and we had to do inspections, make sure everybody's uniform was intact, their tie clips, haircuts, the whole 9 yards. I was like, just like in boot camp, but it was fun. We had a fun group there.
And you get out, of course, and you're in NSU 6. And as I was thinking about it, I'm like, it's really one heck of a territory, because NSU 6, for those of you that don't know, or for those that may not be familiar with the old geographic makeup of the New York City Police Department's neighborhood stabilization units, what areas did NSU 6 rather cover?
NSU 6 covered the 2-5 precinct, 119th Street, and between Park and Lexington, 2-8 precinct, up there on St. Nicholas and 128, I think, and the 3-2 precinct up on 135th Street, and between 7th and 8th Avenue, I can't remember, but I know it's still there. And it was tough going back there. You know, it was you see the sirens. We had the foot posts, so you know the rookies foot posts. My first foot post was on. We had 135th Street to 141st Street and 8th Avenue. So we're standing on the post. It's a young lady and I, female officer, Maritza Zabala, good person. And the two officers on the adjoining post came over to us and said, our radio went dead. I said, well, walk back to the precinct. If the sergeant comes by, will tell me the radio went dead. Go get a new radio. With that, an unmarked car pulls up. So, plain clothes, didn't even know who the person was on the recorder side. He said, it's all right to have 2 officers on foot posts, but not 4. I said, sir, their radio went out. I'll just tell them to go to the precinct to get a new radio, get a new battery. He said, what's your name, sir, officer? I said, Ruiz. He said, Ruiz? I said, no, sir, Ruiz. Wound up, he was the shoe fly from the borough, Lieutenant Moriarty. So they went back. He said, I'll be watching you. So we go on a detail during the summer because they extended our time in NSU. So he comes into Central Park and he says, hello, Officer Ruiz. I said, oh, God, not him. Because they were having a precinct picnic party. Go up there, get in the radio and check the car with a guy from the 2-6 driving around. I said, man, I hope I don't come over here. I said, at first I said, does he turn out of the 2-6? He said, yeah, that's the shoe fly from the borough, Lieutenant Moriarty. I said, oh, God, I hope I don't come here. Well, orders come down. 2-6 precinct. So we're standing roll call, and he comes in there to sign in. We're in front of the desk. Hello, Officer Ruiz, and welcome to the 2-6. We're each other. I said, oh no, not me. But yeah, he didn't mess with us. He didn't mess with us. It was a good time, and the shoe was fun. We had good officers, good training, sergeants, Sergeant Smith, Bobby Gyrak, Gervasi, Pasculo. They were good training officers. Good training officers. You know, every once in a while, we'd go into the radio call with the FTO, and they'd take us all around, show us, you know, help us writing summonses and putting our, you know, showing us this is what you look for. But being I was born up in El Barrio, I had one. I knew what to look for. I knew you see something with like almost a bodega, but you knew they were selling drugs in there.
Right.
You know, we walk on the post. They said selling drugs over there. I said, how you know? That's all false stuff there. They're not selling anything in there. You see anybody coming out of there with a bag? They had a bag of something, but they didn't have a shopping.
Food.
It wasn't food shopping. But I enjoyed my time in the 2-5, working in issue 6. It was good, and 2-6 was good also. Great house. Oh, we had some great guys there, and it was a split between Columbia University and Morningside Heights, and it was good. That was a good learning experience. We had a gang up there called the Ball Busters on 137th Street. They were notorious, but I had a good time up in the 2-6.
Yeah, it was a great house to work. There's a lot to do. And you have a couple of your old colleagues here already tuning in. Billy Kennedy's here. He says, looking forward to this. Ray's a great guest and a great guy. So he's tuning in via YouTube and, of course, via LinkedIn tonight. Rick Martinez, my brother Ray. Great to see you.
Flacco, I love you. Love you, Bill.
Look at this beautiful character here. Patty Pogan. Hey, Mike. Ray. And Ray, the best. Patty Pogan.
Love you, Pat.
Yes, Pat's a good guy. He will be on this show next week, of course. So looking forward to that conversation with him. So that being said, working in the 2-6 during that time, the most effective cop, and I remember talking about this with Rick when he was on the show, is the cop that grew up in that neighborhood because he or she knows all the players. They grew up with them. They saw them doing what they weren't supposed to do. So naturally, you're going to know where to gravitate to. And especially in a time like that, listen, you don't want crime to rise. You don't want it to be at an unbearable level for the innocent citizens of a given community. But as I said before, where do the best firemen come from? Where there's a lot of fires. Where do the best cops come from? Where there's a lot of crime in a given precinct. The 2-6, that had to be a heck of a training ground. And especially given the fact that you knew where to go. I mean, career advancement or getting noticed for all the right reasons had to be basically handed on a platter.
Mm-hmm. It was funny because I grew up in a 2-3, and I grew up with a lot of guys that went the wrong way, doing stuff that they weren't supposed to do, and it was hard, because I came from, my father died when I was 13, so my mother had to raise us. So I said, I'm gonna walk the line. I'm not gonna go that way. I saw a bunch of them go to jail. And it was funny because before I became a cop, I worked in state corrections. So where I worked at was Downstate Correctional Facility in Fishkill, New York. And when they got sentenced at Rikers, Downstate was the reception classification center. So working in the mess hall, all of a sudden you hear, "Yo, Ray!" I'm like, eyebrows up. I'm like, uh-oh. And it was guys that I grew up with, guys I hung out with, played ball with, doing time, either drug possession or other dumb stuff. And I was like, And like a couple of them, I kept that on the down low when I was going through my investigation. And a couple of them found out that they were goofing on me. "Oh, you're gonna be a pig. You're gonna be a pig." I said, "Better than what you're doing."
Exactly. That's a good point. It's a good counterpoint. Better than that. Better than that.
At least I'm walking. I don't have anybody telling me, "All right, lights out. You can take a shower now. Come on, you go to the mess hall to eat." No.
And it's sad because naturally you have good memories with these individuals when you're growing up with them, like you said, playing ball, things like that. But there's a pathway. We all come to that fork in the road, right? And either you go left, and left is the right path, and you go right, and you end up going south. And those guys, hopefully they got it together, but a lot of them, unfortunately, they stay in that same vicious cycle for the rest of their lives. They become, career criminals.
Very true. And, for the short time that I had my father, I love him. God bless him. May he rest in peace. Yeah. He drew the line. He was strict.
Right.
He was strict. He was like, if there was a party in the building, because I grew up in the projects, I'm a PJ kid, and if there was a party in the building, I'd ask mom. Mom say, "Okay, now go ask your father." And even if it was across the hall, he'd say no. I took it as that. I didn't question him. That was it. Anything. I was like, okay. Even if I wanted a bike, I said, "Dad, can I have a bike for Christmas?" He'd come out with the newspaper article, "Boy hit by car while riding a bike." Okay, I took it as word.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I mean, and you know what? He was looking out for you. I'm laughing because We're live on 3 different sites tonight. We're live on YouTube, we're live on LinkedIn, and we're live on Twitter. And on Twitter, Jimmy Riley quote tweeted this current broadcast, which is live. He said, "This was Ray's first ESU truck, and it's the ESU truck from like the 30s."
Yes, he always sends me those things. I'm like, oh, you. Jimmy's a great.
Shout out to Jimmy.
When I got into his emergency, his dad was up in 3 truck.
I
remember his dad. Good man.
Good man, Jimmy, and thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you for making me laugh, but don't distract me here because I got to get through this interview, and I can't do that if you're tweeting this broadcast with those memes or those photos. Anyway, pre-ESU, when you're thinking about the 2-6 and that time, 82 to 86, what was the most rewarding call that reaffirmed why you were so glad to have come on the job, and what was the most dangerous call where you said to yourself, "Holy crap, am I glad I came out of that in one piece"? Pre-emergency service.
Most rewarding job in the 2-6 was catching these kids that robbed a blind woman. They were dodging in and out, but we got them all. We got all 3 of them, and she was so grateful, And it was like we pulled up on the scene, my partner and I, Ron McGregor, and we got the call. It was in our sector. We were right there, and we see them running down 113th Street towards Broadway. And we put her in the car. Another sector came. We put her in their car, and Ron and I just started running on down the block, and we were able to catch them. Most dangerous, I guess, is There weren't too many in the 2-6. We had cops hurt and all this, but while I worked my shift, we didn't, because we were in the 9 squad chart when I worked, when I came on. It was like a week of days, week of 4 to 12s, then another week of days, then back-to-back 4 to 12s, and then we went to the midnights. So it was technically on those shifts, it was kind of quiet. I never had anything dangerous while I was in the 2-6 on any of the tours.
Which is a relief.
One of our guys getting shot in the scooter from a sniper on 125th Street. So that opened everybody's eyes up.
Right. No, I mean, listen, anything could have happened at any given time on that job, and that was a violent decade to be a cop because, as I mentioned before, all you have to do is go on the Officer Down Memorial page, and now it's all combined since the 3 departments merged in 1995. But between housing, transit, and the NYPD, if you look at the cause of death for so many of those cops, about 90% of them that were killed during the 80s, it says gunfire. So
I remember a lot of them.
Yeah,
a lot of them.
Yeah,
it
was survival of the fittest.
Guys getting killed up in housing projects up by Harlem River Drive, Forster and Laurie, and I remember one cop. He was shot across the street from where I lived. He was on a foot post, and that's when I first saw emergency service, because they were doing floor by floor search in the building. So they knocked on our door. We lived on the 8th floor. My father was home. My mom, my sister was sleeping, and all of a sudden, knocking on the door. Boom, 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 boom. Police, open up. Big burly guy with the old ceramic vest comes in. And I'm like, hey, the shotgun, checking under the beds, checking the closet. They wound up capturing the guys. They were in the floor below us on the 7th floor. But I was like, wow. And I look out the window, and you can see the old International Diamond Rio green emergency truck out there. There was like 3 of them. I'm like, wow. And that hooked me on to going into the police department and emergency service.
Last note. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was like 8, 9 years old. I was like, wow. And then after that, you just seeing the trucks going down 2nd Avenue, to the jobs and all that. And the International Suburbans they used to have, and the Chevy Suburbans, green, white, and black. I was like, I love those colors. The green, white, and black vehicles. Because as kids, cops used to come on a job. So we used to sit inside the radio car while they were going inside the building because they left the car windows open.
Mhm.
So we're thinking the siren was the high beam button. So we're hitting the high beam button thinking that's a siren, not knowing it was the high beam button on the old cars. But we had a good time. We had a good time.
I imagine. And Paulie Perricone is tuning in tonight via LinkedIn. He was just on the show for my Bomb Squad miniseries.
Yes,
Ray
I
Ruiz,
saw that.
ESU legend. Boy, I learned from that man. Good to see you, Paul.
Love you, Paul. Miss you.
Good man, Paul. Good man. And I just saw Paul, and unfortunately, I couldn't attend. I had a show to do that was for the best of the bravest. But good on Paul and the other 15 members of the Bomb Squad who retired recently. They were honored at a party over in Manhattan. So I'm still sick. I missed it, Paulie. Hopefully, I can make the next one. But congratulations again, brother, and good to see you. So just last note on the 2-6 before I get to ESU. The summertime. I feel like so much happens during the summertime. It's the polar opposite, right? The fire department, I asked those guys, would you say to go to more fires in the summer and the winter? They say the winter time because people are using heating systems and so on and so forth. And in the meanwhile, in the police department, although anything can happen at any time, it seems the summertime is when everything starts to get especially active. So,
Oh, yeah.
what it was, I imagine that was that on steroids in the 2-6, or am I mistaken?
Well, basically, we had a lot of robberies in Morningside Park. And it was like, because we went down, excuse me, from the river, the Hudson River, Riverside Drive, West Side Highway, down to Morningside Drive. Our side was I think, the west side of Morningside Drive, and the other side was the 2-8. So we were constantly backing them up on jobs because even though we'd still hear them on the dispatcher would be telling us, back up to 2-8. And 2-8 was hot back then. Drugs ran rampant over there in the 2-8. I had my first post besides 141st Street, and the 2-8 was 116th Street and 8th Avenue. So it was crazy back then. There was collars galore. You go in to have your meal in the 2-8, and it was packed with perps. It was like they were collaring up left and right. And the Morningside Park was one of our hot spots up there at 110th Street to 119th Street, 119 or 120th Street. That's how big it was. But that was the wild part. And then past 125th Street, going to the upper part up there, Broadway to 141st Street. That was our boundaries from Broadway, Riverside Drive down to St. Nicholas Avenue. That was our borderline. So that was a hot spot during the summer. Shots fired. You'd be driving around or guys just throwing eggs at you for no reason. It was crazy. During the winter, it wasn't that bad.
It's too cold to be out doing crime anyway. Who wants to rob when it's 15 degrees outside? Yeah. Step outside. I imagine, the step outside, the guy that's selling crack for a living, step out, you know what? I'm going to take a day off today, boys. We have to wear 3 layers. We'll pick it up tomorrow. So, that brings us into the ESU years, and 16 of those 20 years that you spent were in emergency services. I say when I was introducing you, when you worked in order, numerical order, which is funny to me, at least a math geek, 2, 3, and 4, but you started off in 2. Now, before I get to getting to 2, it's interesting because, and I have to remind myself of this, there's been 22 volumes of this miniseries, and I'm talking to the guys and the gals who have made it through the STS Academy. For as many as have made it through that academy and into the unit itself, there are just as many over the years that have not. And it's a grueling academy. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to learn. And I know from the chat, Patty Pogan, Paulie, and Sergeant Kennedy, you guys can attest to this. So in the processes, and I'll pull up the STS picture, and while I pull it up, you can, of course, tell your story. In the process of that academy, if there was ever a moment where you're saying to yourself, man, oh man, is this tough? What was the thing within you mentally that allowed you to continue up that drive, continue up that resolve, and push on through to make sure that you succeeded in getting into the unit?
Well, it was when I went into STS, at this time, this was the biggest class they ever put in. It was 54 guys, And we had other jurisdictions in there. I think we had Jersey City, Westchester County, and NYPD. And right there when I was in the 2-6. I was working when McCormick got killed. So I had station house security. I was doing the 4 to 12. And we had ESU right next door to us. So, seeing the big, at that time, they were a satellite unit. They didn't have a big truck. So they just had the old REPs. And I see them coming back and all somber and all this, and found out that McCormick got shot up in the Bronx. He was killed. And I was like, whoa. And the ESU Sergeant Conroy used to come over to the 2-6 a lot and talk to us and this and that. And I was like, and I, talking with the old timers there, Charlie Pagani, Carl Montalbano, and Jimmy Velez. They were there, but, before Henry, they all retired after I got there. But it looked interesting. And I said, wow. I got an application from Sergeant Conroy. And at that time, STS, when I went in 86, was 6 weeks. We went in March 10th. The orders came down. It's a Friday. And I think we started March 13th. And we were out in the trucks by April 21st.
Wow.
And, they taught us the basics, ropes, rappelling, setting up the airbag, train jobs, elevator jobs. We would go to the housing projects over there, and the mechanics would teach us the elevator jobs. And then we go with transit down into the subway. We go to the transit museum, and we learned the train jobs, lifting and using the airbags over there. And then they had one of the old hangars, the original hangar that they used to do STS in was they had a skid, mock-up of a skid. So we go up there, start learning how to rappel. And I was like, ooh, I like this. And then we did our training over the Brooklyn Bridge, climbing up the cables and all this. And I was like, this is interesting. I held my own. The horse tools, ropes, the whole 9 yards. And it was a pat on the back to myself for making it through STS. And then after that, we would go through EMT training, then do the EPT training for the EDPs, then the scuba training. But now it's all into one. Where I think it's 6-8 months now for the training for these guys.
No, it's lengthy. I mean, and they do so much more now. I mean, with hazmat, with suspicious packages, the terrorism aspect of it for well-documented reasons. But it is, I mean, at least there's more time to absorb the material. In 6 weeks, yeah, it's shorter, but there's a lot in that 6 weeks. And I guess it was a reason for that, right? Trying to see who not only could get it on the physical aspect, who could pass those physical tests, but who had the best mental fortitude to be able to get on through.
Exactly. Going to the range, because that was right after I went for my interview out at the office. A couple of weeks later, as a matter of fact, it was Billy Kennedy's dad that called me. Said, we're going to send down, notify your roll call. You have to go to the range with the shotgun for shotgun training. So this is before we were accepted into the unit to see how we would handle the heavy weapon, especially the shotgun. So we went up to the range. Who's up there with me? I saw Dominic Mendolari and Eric Becker. They were partners. And I can't remember who else, but we weren't in yet. It was just to see how we could handle the shotgun. Went up there, and then several weeks later, March 10th, 86, the orders came down. I was working 4 to 12 in the sector car. All of a sudden, got a 10-2. Sector Charlie David, 10-2 forthwith. I'm looking at my partner and said, what did we do now? So go to the lieutenant. He said, Ruiz, come here. Shows me the orders. He said, the teletype. This your name? Yes. That was my last name, the 2-6. And I was like, whoa. My partner was like, huh? Where you going? I said, I just got called into emergency service. He said, what? but it was a great feeling. It was a great feeling. It was even a greater feeling making it through the STS course, and then getting assigned to tow truck. that was an experience. My first week.
And we'll get to that now, because by the time, I don't know the makeup now. I mean, I know certain trucks these days, we were talking off the air about how busy 3 and 4 are these days. Back then, and this is no knock on the other trucks that do a lot of work, 2 truck was the busiest of the bunch. They were doing a lot, and that extended well into the late 90s. It's one of the trucks, as I pointed out before when I was talking with Paulie for our Bomb Squad show, that has the TCV, which I'm sure you have to deal with a number of times out there. You guys got the RMI there too, and John Delera, who we'll talk about a little bit later, was a master with that and rewrote the operation manual, for crying out loud. That's how smart he was with it. So there's a lot of equipment alone in 2 truck, and you get there. Go ahead.
We had the old LaGuardia bomb truck there also.
Yeah, it was made out of what? It was some kind of wire. It was made out of, right?
Bridge cable.
Yeah, that's what it was. Because you know who was telling me about that? Because he drove it a few times. Kevin Barry. Another one, it was a former 1 truck guy who ended up in the bomb squad for a number of years, 19 years.
I learned to drive that when I was in 2 truck.
And to park it too.
And that was the hard part, because we'd have to call. It was, you've seen 2 truck, you've seen that street.
Yeah, it's narrow.
And back in that driveway where the gas pumps are, you had to clear half of that street out. From the radio cars and the personal cars to back that thing in. It was an that. One night on the midnight, they called both of them out. It was by the in Queens, and they had found ether. So they called us out, and they called 8 trucks LaGuardia out. We had the bomb squad loaded all this ether up in both LaGuardia bomb trucks, and we drove those to the range and left them there. That was crazy. That was crazy. The escort going up there.
Oh my goodness! Drive that up to the range in Robin's Neck. Y'all be easy. Here you go. Have fun. Oh man. So you were telling me that that first week in 2 truck was pretty active, and I guess it plays into my first question. Do you remember your first job in 2 truck? But tell me about that first week, because it sounded interesting.
Well, the first week, it's you're trying to mesh in, but you don't want to say the wrong thing. You're already told, shut your mouth, watch, learn. Because when I first got the 2 truck, I was told you will not touch a long gun for a year. You will be handling tools. Okay. So it was like a feel out moment that everybody's looking at the new guy. How's he going to be? To see if he's got the nerve to be here, the heart to be here. And, we get they were breaking my shoes. And I just sat there like, okay, what's next? Playing little jokes or whatever. Go fetch this. You're the new guy. Go get that. Go get this. Bring this. Okay, no problem. I just did what I was told to do. And they play practical jokes on you. But going on the first job is you get the adrenaline rush. You're like in the REP, like, wow. How are we going to handle this? You're psyching yourself for the job, but you're going through your head. How am I going to react? What am I going to do? How cool am I going to be? Make sure I watch my partner 6. Got his back. Make sure nothing happens to him. And it was fun. It's it was an experience. The first week, just learning. Going down. Henry and John take me down, check the truck out, the REPs, because we got the big truck, I think in 87. And it was brand new.
The old Mac, right?
No. Ours was the Ford cab. We had the first Ford cab over. Us and 10 truck.
All right.
And it was a beauty. We were like, whoa. Because, like I said, when I got there, it was a satellite. We had the TCV in there. Because when I was in the 2.6, they were digging out the garage floor for the truck to fit because they had to lower it because the truck couldn't fit. Then we had the big truck, RMI, then the TCV in the back, the old yellow one. And then we had the two small REPs on the other side. But it was an experience. It was fun learning. It was a good learning experience. You know, I said I had good teachers in Henry and John Moran. Eddie O'Neill was another one with the ropes. He was good. And, you know, everybody had their specialty, ropes, tactics, whatever. You know, I had a good time there, you know. They always like, all right, who's going up on the bridge? Me. I go, okay. Put the Laracas on, you know, not put the Laracas on, poop, go up the bridge. I love the heights.
Right.
You had guys that like the heights, getting up, going up the bridge or, you know, on the roof and all that. But I enjoyed it.
Or in the helicopters for, you know, the air sea rescue parts of it, you know, whenever you had a job in the water.
Yes.
Yeah. It's one of the classic photos too.
We had I wanted to go when we were training in SCS. We were looking at ooh, nice. Like 100 feet down, propelled, boom. I wanted to go back up, but they said no, one shot. Then they set up the airbag. They set up the airbag over at right outside the hangar. They said, all right, who wants to jump? I said, okay, I'll do it. Jumping off the roof of the hangar into the airbag. Whee! But it was fun. Two truck. We had a good time. We had Mojo over there. Bobby Hetherington brought Mojo in. And like, whoa, buddy boy. He was a great dog. Henry and I took him out on patrol with us one time when we had the 4-door REPs. So he's sitting in the back, and a black Impala pulls up next to us. We're on 5th Avenue and 97th Street. And look, it's Ray Ruiz, the CO. He says, hey, good third wheel you got in the back. We're like, whoa. But Chief Abruzzi was great. He was great. He loved Mojo. You know, everybody loved Mojo. He was a good dog. Guys used to take him on vacation. We used to take him up on our fishing trips to Maine. And the minute Mojo jumped out of that car, he was gone in the woods. He was happy. He was a good dog.
Yeah, they're the best, aren't they? I mean, I feel it now because I have a toy poodle. He's not mine; he's my sister's, but I'm with them all the time. And you know, I love those. I love that little guy. And I wasn't a dog person before, but if you're not a dog person, once you get them, they turn you into one. Man, they're the best.
Exactly.
Yeah. Before I continue with you,
it was a mix between a pit bull and an English bull terrier. I got him on a hit at a drug den up in the Bronx. I got him as a pup. So I told the sergeant, I said, I'm going to put a hold on him at the HPCA. He said, okay, just bring me the receipt. I wound up adopting him.
And before I continue with a couple of my questions regarding 2-Truck, and we'll get to 3 and 4, of course, in a little bit, as I'm waiting for Garrett Cole to do something to piss me off. He has not done it yet. Billy Kennedy says, you the Portalite guy? What's that in reference to? Can it be said on the show?
Yes, I was. Now it's Portalite. Oh, God. Billy, you're not. I love you.
One of the very best, Patty McGee says. He's tuning in tonight as well. Patty, another great former E-Man in his own right. Now, I know 4-Truck had the airbag, but I remember because I was watching this in an episode of Cops where Mario de la Vega is the lieutenant and they get a jumper job. It's not a jumper job. The guy's he's a nut, but he's not suicidal. But they bring the airbag out of 2-Truck. Did you guys at one point have it too, or was it just a 4-Truck thing?
If I remember correctly, it was originally at 3-Truck. It was in a small REP when I first got it, and then they got the big truck with the life raft on board, on top, carries the airbags and other lights. But 3-Truck originally had the airbag. It was in a small REP. They put a winch in there and a ramp, and we would winch it in and out. But what we had at 2-Truck was the RMI, TCV, and the bomb truck. Then four truck wound up getting it because after I left three truck, that's when they got the pot truck. The pot truck and the first little small armored car that we call the Peacekeeper. Before they got the pot truck. And then three truck, we got the airbag with the raft. And I at four truck and I think something else. I can't remember.
In two, you guys were doing
folding it up, then putting it on the hand lift and cranking it. Oh, if that thing wasn't working, then you had to forcefully push it in there.
How much would it take? 3 of you? 4 of you?
Oh, take a bunch. It was heavy after it was folded up.
I was going to say in two truck, didn't mean to cut you off. My apologies on that. I know each truck has its signature emergency. I remember talking about this with Glenn Klein out of 10 truck, right? They had a lot of MVAs they had to respond to because they were right near the highways. You guys, it would seem, had a lot of perp searches and perp jobs in general in that particular truck. So although you had your fair share of rescues, it was more so a tactical truck in that regard. So tell me about those searches and what went into them and some of the more notable ones you can recall.
Well, on our perp searches, the one thing I always remember that they taught us in STS was even on barricaded perps or perp searches, we took our time. We made a plan before we went in. Who was going to go left, who was going to go right. But before we even went into the apartment, we went to the apartment above or the apartment below, made a sketch of the apartment. So this way you're not going in blind. And so this way, if it was a railroad flat, that there's rooms on the left side, there's rooms on the right side. So, you're clearing them one by one instead of just rushing in and then somebody coming from behind and just taking a shot at you or whatever. So we, times we had to up in the 3-4 especially. It was constantly back then, shots fired. It was terrible up there. We go up there, narcotics would be doing hits, and all of a sudden, the issue requested. Now we got to tell them, go upstairs or downstairs. And this is before we got the stun grenades. We didn't have stun grenades. And just taking the door, forcing the door, and just taking our time going in with the body bunker and just making sure everybody was okay, watching your partner's back. It was hell back then. It was hell back then up at a 3-4.
Because
you were lucky if
time.
It was crazy. We spent most of our time up in the 3-4. 3-4 to 3-0, times in the 2-8 and the 3-2. Those were the 4 hot precincts that we had. But the 3-4 was the hottest. It was constantly busy. Perp searches, shots fired, confirmed shots fired, evidence searches, But it kept us on our toes, and we learned.
Right. Around this time, a couple of things happened. I mean, granted, you weren't in these trucks when they went down, but obviously ESU's small family. 1987 is when Frank LaSala gets killed in that fire over in One Trucks area, right in the same block, I think it's the 13th precinct. A couple years after that, in 89, Paul Yurku, who later went out to the bomb squad, he was shot and injured in the line of duty. Thankfully, his vest saved him, but he came very close to dying that night. Then, of course, that same year, as Rick knows, he's in the chat, was the Larry Davis incident, that shootout in the Bronx. So all this stuff is training. It's all the stuff that's continuing to refine you guys in your mission to do what is one of ESU's hallmarks, which is proper tactics. Looking at those situations from an objective point of view, what was the training like? What was the discussion like in 2 Truck alone after they went down?
Yeah. Everybody would talk to find out what happened, what went down. A bunch of the guys would be talking, say, well, how did this happen? Did anybody do anything wrong? And nobody did anything wrong. They followed tactics. You got the guy with the rabbit tube to breach the door. You tie it off, and you just peek inside, and then the sergeant will tell you, all right, let's go. You have the body bunker, next guy behind him, whether he's going to have a shotgun or a long gun. Then you have 2 body bunker teams. going back at each other. One guy will go straight, and the other guy will split off. Like if it's a big living room, go straight to the back bedroom, and the other guy will contain the people there in the living room. And then, you just take your time. You don't rush into it. You have to analyze everything. Because it's if you do that, you rush right in without thinking, somebody's going to get hurt. Because I was off those days when Frank died. I met him a couple times when I flew down in one truck. Paulie Yerko I met, and Ricky. Ricky and I were in STS together.
Right. It's tough because obviously, like I said, these are the guys that you break bread with, and it's not like the guys in one truck don't know the guys, for example, in 4 truck flying, working in these trucks all the time as you do. It's one of the things that I think is the best part about emergency service. There gets to be a real sense of camaraderie. Everyone knows each other, and sometimes
you get flyer mileage through that. The only truck I never went to was a truck.
Oh, because it was too far. A lot of guys told me that, Yeah, I think the system used to be, and I forget who told me this. It might have been Ronnie Griffith when he was on the show. Was that? Or I think it was him. Where if a guy lived out in Staten Island, that was just where he happened to live, and it was known the night before that 5 truck was going to be shorthanded for the day. They tell the guy the night before who lived out there, hey, tomorrow they're not going to have this guy or this gal go work there. Or at least they had a fly car. They'd bring you in the fly car, right, to these given trucks.
Well, back then, when I was in emergency, Staten Island was under the patrol borough concept. It was like they had their own little police department. So 5 truck was HESI, Highway Emergency Staten Island. So you could be working as an emergency service in 5 truck, and you could be making overtime as a highway cop, but wearing your emergency service uniform. And the only time we would ever see the guys from 5 truck, because they had their own roll call. They did their own roll calls. They weren't part of it. They were part of SOD, but they were under the patrol borough concept. And the only time we saw them was when we went to Camp Smith or STS Refresher. You say, oh, that's the foster kids of the division.
The Richmond County Sheriff's Office, as they used to call them.
Exactly. And there was good guys there. Eddie Trentacosta, one guy, Charlie Billings. He was in my STS. He went to 5 truck. There's good guys with 5 truck.
Yeah, no, there's quite a few of them that have been on the show. Brian Hearn, who went out to the bomb squad later on, he's been on this show. Brian was a 5 truck guy to start. John Latanzio before he went over to I think 3 truck. Johnny
Latanzio. Johnny nights. Good guy.
Yeah, good guy. John Latanzio's been on the show. He was also a former 5 truck guy as well. So real quick before I get to the 4 truck years, and we're talking with Ray Ruiz. This is volume 22 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. Happy to have Ray on board tonight. Were you in 3 truck by the time the Trade Center bombing happened, or were you still in 2 when that went down? Or were you working that day?
I transferred up to 3 truck in 1993, August of 93.
Okay, so you were still in 2 for the bombing.
I was in 2 truck with the 93 bombing.
Yeah. Did you go down to that, or were you off duty?
I was off that day, and I came into Manhattan to pick up my daughter from school, and then I went in, and they said, "You got to go. We're going down to the 93 bombing." We walked through that place, and it was a mess. You see this big crater there on the first floor. And from what I understand, there was like tables there with trophies where the explosion came through from down the basement, the garage. And they had just finished having a little girl's beauty pageant there, from what we were told. But the devastation down there, we were like shocked that building was still up.
Yep.
It was crazy.
It was that was the dry run.
Truck right there doing, with the equipment. Anybody need anything, they came up to the big truck, we gave them the equipment.
Yeah,
that was wild.
No, it was a big operation for sure with a lot of those guys down there in ESU. And, listen, then the floor searches, you had to go floor by floor because the elevators were all busted. There, you got your freaking flyer miles. If you skip leg day at the gym, you made up for it that day.
Yeah, you got your steps in.
Pretty much on that one. So you go to two truck. You go to 3 truck in August of 1993. You had a lot of time in emergency by that point. A lot of time at 2. You're having a great time. You're working with great guys. What made you want to go to 3?
Well, as the guys used to break my shoes when I first transferred to 3, I live up in the Bronx, and 3 truck from my house is 2 stop signs and 3 traffic lights. That close to the house.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So, and you know, my daughter was going to school up here, so you know, I would pick her up at school, be more convenient for me. I went to the midnights then. That's when I transferred up to 3 truck. I went to midnights, and great bunch of guys. Terry McTeague, Scotty Strauss. I was in the squad with Scotty Strauss and Jerry Kuchler. You had his brother on.
Yep.
Kevin Donahue, Jimmy Savage. I can't remember the other guy's name, but it was a great midnight crew. The midnights were nice because you know you had squad D1, D2, and D3, so we all worked with each other, and you know we had fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Excuse me, but that was a good squad up there. Good squad, especially with Scotty and Jerry up there. We used to have a good time with those 2. The whole midnight squad up there was good. Because when I first got out there, I didn't want to break the partners up, so I would always take the fly. I'd go to 4 truck, I go to 2 truck, I go to 1 truck. If somebody had to fly for 10 truck, because I didn't want to break up the partners. So then one day they said, Ray, when are you going to work over here? I said, you know, it's about time. I learned the Bronx. So, but yeah, it was good. It was good. Good time there. It was good laughs, good times, especially with the other squads. You know, Al Rosenthal, Kevin Morrissey, Frank Camacho. They worked the day shift. They were in the day shift from the scooter squad. Those guys were pisses. They made us laugh. They made us laugh. We come in they're coming on the day shift or the 4 to 12, and it was always something to laugh about over there with that squad because they were that kooky.
Midnights in the Bronx are always an interesting thing. And midnights anywhere in New York City, right, are an interesting thing, but especially midnights in the Bronx. When you look back on that time, and I'll get to a story. I have to go back to 2 truck in a second because there's an interesting story with that I'll talk about momentarily. But when you look back on those tours in 3 specifically, and we'll get to 4 a little bit later, of course, tell me about some of the more crazier things that happened.
Craziest things. We were we had flown to 4 truck, and we're listening to division radio of a naked EDP up on by Crotona Park. So I was working with John McCullough, 4 truck. He's driving, I'm the recorder. So we get up there before the 4-8 gets there. And we're looking around, and I spot the guy. He was across the street, naked, with a broken bottle in his hand. I get out. I have the old taser in my hand, loaded up with the darts. I said, buddy, drop the bottle. We can take you to the hospital, this and that. And he's just ranting and raving, coming at me. I said, step back or I'm going to taser you. Kept on coming. I wound up tasering him in the jewels. Yes. This guy was jumping up and down. I said, drop the bottle. He wouldn't drop it. He jumped so high that he ripped the wires out of the dart, and now he's just running down the street. So we chase him, we get him, we're wrestling with him on the floor. 4-8 finally shows up. Buddies, you want to give us a hand? This is yours. So they get out, get him, we wrap him up, put him in the back of the RMP. I said, oh, and you got to vouch for the darts. He said, "Hey, in the jewels." No. Yes. Have a good time. That's one of the funniest systems we had up there. I couldn't believe it. And then what I used to do, I used to carry dog biscuits in my pant pocket, and or have a baggie with me. So we get a job up in the 4-3. Vicious dog. Somebody left the dog in somebody's driveway.
Mm.
The dog is just barking, barking. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So I said, no, no, that's a vicious dog. I said, no, the dog is scared. Get a couple of biscuits, give it to him. Open the gate, comes up, they put the noose on. I said, what? Yeah, the dog is scared. I'd be barking too if I see 8 guns around me. I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
You put him in the bag of the RMP. I gave the guy the bag, take it to the air. Just keep feeding him the cookies. He'd be okay. And they said, you know, son, you were right.
Yeah. So it's good that way because I mean, it broke my heart now, especially my perspective is different having a dog in my life because there was a warrant in that episode of Cops of which I used the intro where it's 2 truck guys, it's Petey Conlon, Jimmy McVeigh, Billy Lutz is on that warrant too.
Oh, Jimmy
And
McVeigh.
yeah, a great guy. He's a character. I'm trying to get him on the show. He's like, I don't know if I measure up. I'm like, you do, so come on. But as it was, there's shots, and Lieutenant Sobo's on this one, and he hears the shots. He starts running up the stairs, and they don't show it, but it was a dog, and I'm like, oh god, and I know they had to because the dog was vicious. It was a pit bull, was charging at him. They didn't have much of a choice. It wasn't ESU that shot. I think it was the anti-crime guys. But I'm like, man. Could they have tried something else? Like I know that, I know they did the right thing, but I'm like, it just so I'm glad that you handled that way because it really does break your heart when you have
I remember one time in 2 truck, Henry and I, we got an EDP up in the 3-4, right off of Dykeman Street. I can't remember. I think it was Haven Avenue. Beautiful building. So we go upstairs. She had dogs. It was 2 German shepherds, male, female, and she had puppies. I thought, oh. And the 3-4 says, you ain't seen nothing yet. We see a fence over by the living room and into the kitchen. There were 30 other German shepherds in there.
Oh my god.
And they're all barking like, ooh, ooh. So we're like, oh man, how are we going to do this? So it winds up. They take her to the hospital. Now we got to take all these dogs down to the ASPCA and tell them put a hold on her. She's in the hospital. We don't know if she's going to commit it. So I tell the sergeant of the 3-4, I'm going to have to use one of your vans to transport because they took the mother and the father and the puppies in a radio car. Here it is. I'm driving down to the ASPCA with 30 German shepherds in the back, and they're all sitting in the back going like, freedom, we're out, this and that. And the dogs were well kept. The apartment was immaculate, and the dogs were well kept. Get to the ASPCA. Say, I got a couple of dogs for you. So the guy says, how many? I said, come take a look. His eyes just popped out of his head like, huh? I said, oh yeah. And we walked them. They were very well behaved. We walked them in. While I was driving, they were like 2 or 3 of them were like in the back with each other, how they get close. And they saw, I said, oh, hey, behave. And they just sat there looking, got them into the AHPC. And eventually she got out of the hospital and they gave her all the dogs back.
Oh, because she was taking care of them at least, right?
That was the funniest, one of the funniest jobs I had up in 2 truck. Couldn't believe it. It was like all those dogs. And then driving down, these people looking at all the dogs in there like, huh?
Right. No, I love it. I love it. Quick question here from Eugene Menezio in the chat. And we were talking about one of them, so I know the answer to one of these guys is yes. He wants to know, did you work with Steve Stefanakis or John Heydrich?
Worked with Steve Stefanakis up in 3 truck.
Mm-hmm. He was originally a 3 truck guy? Or I know he went out to 10 later on, but he started out in 3?
Steffi was a 3 truck guy with the merge.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that. All right.
Steffi came with his partner Richie Winwood.
Yes. Yeah. Good man, Richie. Yep. Those guys later went up to 10.
Came there with his partner. I can't remember his name. He came. Vinny Danz came, God rest his soul, with his partner Chris Hanley.
Yep. John Coughlin came too as a sergeant.
Yeah, Coughlin went up to 4 truck.
Okay. Yeah.
Vinny Danz was in 3 with us. Chris Hanley, they came from housing.
Mhm.
Chris eventually went to be a canine handler.
Mhm.
Everybody thought, I can't remember Joe Guerra's partner's name. Damn, slips my mind. But they were good guys. We had fun with them. That's he is a character.
He is, and when he leaves, the day that he retires, which as we know is in the year of 3,562. He's the last of the housing guys, so that's really gonna be the end of the era for all the housing rescue guys. And it wasn't around that long; it was only around about 8 months or so. So it's funny because the guys tell us that worked housing rescue, or they tell me that it worked housing rescue. We really weren't around that long for the ESU guys to hate us.
No,
we had less than a year.
I remember one night they had a job up on some high-rise buildings, housing projects, right off of on 161st Street, right down from the Manhattan Bronx Criminal Courts, and it was an elevator job.
Mm-hmm.
But they requested our services to help them out because they had to. And FD was there. We had to breach the wall to get these people out because the elevator, I can't remember what floor it was on, but there was too many people in the elevator and it got stuck in between floors. So they had to breach the wall to get in and rescue those people. And then they had asked, oh, can we come to your quarters to clean up? I said, yeah. So that's when we first had our interaction with them. And they came in and they're like, wow. Look at these quarters, man. Wow, this is neat. And then, eventually we heard the merge coming, and we never had a problem with them or transit.
Yeah.
Whoever was first on the scene did the job, plain and simple. And then they come down and assist.
Billy Kennedy used to call it. He made a joke because he had a squad full of transit guys, rescue guys, and one of them I know was John Bushing. After the merge, he called the squad District 7. And some of the other guys referred to their squad as District 7 too. Because there's a lot of great guys in transit rescue. Joe Ocasio was a transit rescue guy. I think he went up to later on. There was Franco Baraducci, who's on the show. John Bushing, who I mentioned.
He did 4 truck, and Joe Ocasio eventually went to 4 truck.
Yep, he went out to 4 as well. Yeah, a lot of good guys. Mike Waser, who was a sergeant in transit rescue, he went out there as well. So another one.
Brother and I together in emergency, Ronnie.
Oh, really?
He went up the Bronx.
Oh, well, Ronnie eventually ran the whole unit, basically. He was the CO of the unit for a while as an inspector. I've had Ronnie on the show. Ronnie's a good guy. I didn't know they were related. Wow, small world. I guess because you worked midnight, so you weren't on this. I don't think you were on this. I could be wrong. Sean McDonald in 1994, he was shot. He was killed in the Bronx. I don't know if it was in 3 truck or 4 trucks area.
It was in 3 truck up on right off of Fordham Road. He got killed in the vestibule going to this is somebody. It was right down from the church, St. Nicholas Tolentine, I think.
He was frisking 2 robbery suspects, and one of them turned around with a gun and shot him like 5 times, sadly. Yeah, that was March of '94. I don't. So you didn't go on that one working the midnights, I'm assuming. No. But that was one of them I wanted to ask you about. But there's other ones that occurred, and the night this didn't happen during the day tour. I was going to mention Vinny Giudice, but there's another one. Sean Carrington was shot, I think, on a night tour in January of '98, and you were still in 3 for this one. This is before you went to 4 in 2000. The night Sean was shot, did 3 truck go to that, or was that 4 trucks area?
That was probably 4 trucks.
Okay. That was Morris Heights where he was shot, killed.
It's 3 trucks.
Okay. Do you recall that job, or were you off that night? Because that was a night tour.
I was off. The one job that I was on where was Clinton Street, down in 1 truck. Mm-hmm. There was an Oriental guy firing a shotgun off the balcony of the building. And we get down there with 1 truck, and there was housing cops pinned down in the parking lot. So Henry and I go with the REP, put a bomb blanket over, ballistic blanket over, get the guys out. Then the lieutenants and the sergeants, we split the building in half. So we wind up finding the apartment because a woman came out and said the shots are coming from there. And we're all vested up, body bunker. So we have the 2 ballistic shields for the RMIs there. And I was in the middle with the body bunker. So before we put those up, we breached the door, had it tied off. I'm going in with the body bunker in the small little vestibule. I see a shotgun barrel coming around. I said, gun. We closed the door and he let the round go. He said, we secured the door. They bring the 2 ballistic shields up from the RMI, and we're take the peephole off, and I see his 2 children, a little boy and a little girl. And I'm talking to them. I said, come on, kids, we're here to help you. Nobody wants to hurt you. Apparently, it was some type of domestic feud between him and his wife, and she had left him.
Before you continue, was this the job? He suffered minor injuries, but Jack Cambria got shot on this one, right? Was this that job or?
I don't know. I blast hit the shield, and the rounds just split all over the place. People got, because it knocked me down. And I got up and I said, "Oh hell no, no he didn't." I wanted to go back in there, but they took me up the stairs to get treated by EMS. But that was a hard one. We had the stuff down there. Uzi ordered the stun grenades to use, but that day they were having a meeting down at NYPD. So everybody and their moms was up there. Chief Abruzzi decided he wanted to use the stun grenades to get the kids out of there, but they said no about the hearing with the kids, and he wound up killing both of his kids. He gave them sedative. We hear 2 shotgun blasts, and they're like, "What's going on there?" "Oh, sorry." And after he let that round go, when we were going to go in, they took me upstairs to get treated by EMS. Then I heard boom, 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 boom. The guys went in. He blew both of his children's heads off. He killed both of his kids. That was one of the hardest ones when I had to go to the grand jury, and I just burst out in tears there. Because if those chiefs that were going down to 1PP for that meeting weren't there, we could have saved those children. And
that's the hard part with these jobs. Obviously, it takes a lot out of you on certain ones because you want to help these people, and it's not your fault that they ended up, dying, whatever the situation might have been, an accident or something like this. But it wears on you naturally because you're the one that has to see these things. What helped you decompress whenever these jobs would come about?
I started building models. Building models and collecting die-cast police cars, and making them myself. The old green, white, and black ones, the blue and white ones with all the different graphics, and the white ones today. I have over my collection over 200.
Wow.
So that kept me, and then because I never brought my job home. My wife never asked me about my job, or my daughter, or my son. So I was just happy to come home at the end of the tour. And then, like I said, I had my little die-cast collection, making models, and just relaxing at home with my family, going to see my moms and my sister, make sure they were okay and all that.
I will say, brings us back to a job you were telling me about off the air, and I'll get into it now. And I shout out my friend Mark Mulitz, who's tuning in tonight via LinkedIn, I know, for this show. You mentioned 155th in Amsterdam, where I think, well, I'll let you tell the story.
Back then, it was like the Wild Wild West up in the 3-4. And we were working take-back overtime. You had the cops from all over the city coming out to help try to run the crime, bring the crime down up there. So I already had the foot post on 155th to 158th Street and Broadway. So it was light out. Then it got dark, so I told the rookie, "Come on, pair up. I know this is wild over here, so this way nothing would happen." We're walking up towards 156 in Amsterdam, and there was two elderly women there with half a gallon of rum. "Oh, hey, baby, you want to have a drink with us?" "Nah, mama." I said, "I'll come back after the end of the tour." With that, we hear two pops, and I see a male running across the street. Said, "Oh, they're shooting." Look up, it's two Spanish guys shooting at a male black leaning against a car. So I put it over 3-4 take back post so and so. Confirmed shots fired 156 in Amsterdam. All of a sudden, the rookie I was with runs to my left, towards the back of the perp number 1. I wheeled on him. I said, "Police, don't move. Drop the gun. Drop the gun." With that, he wheels around towards the rookie. I pop him twice in the back. He goes down. The rookie lets 2 shots go in my direction. So now I see him down. I said, "Grab the gun. Stay with him." Now, the other perp is running up. There's a school that goes from 155 to 156 on Amsterdam. Then there's a housing project. And there's a walkway going from Amsterdam, I think, to Bradhurst Avenue. I can't remember what the next avenue was. And so I start chasing this guy. I was going to let off a round, but I said no. Somebody come out, and I just kept on chasing. I said, I don't want to hit no innocent bystander. I kept on chasing him. He jumps in the car. I put the description over the radio, and we wound up catching him about 4 blocks away. And that was crazy. I was pissed off because I was supposed to take my daughter the next day to Sesame Police. I was like, damn, what was my day?
You did a great job. You followed proper tactics there, and that's to be commended because, listen, in a situation like that, it's easy to forget those tactics. I know I would, and I'd be a mess on the radio, but I'm always amazed at how calm you guys are able to be and get the information out in an organized, distinct manner under anything but calm circumstances.
And it was funny because everybody in 2 Truck knew I was working up there. Yeah. All of a sudden, they heard the shots fired. They were like, "What, Ray?" They were up there in a heartbeat. All the 2 Truck was up there in a heartbeat. I was like, whoa. It was good. It was good. And it was funny because John DeLara, God rest his soul, was working take back. And he went chasing the perp. I think it was a robbery. I don't know. Down towards Edgecombe Avenue. And the guy thinking there was Edgecombe Park there. The guy jumped off over the wall thinking it was land on grass.
Yeah.
DOA. So they were like, "Don't send the issue up to the 3-4 for take back. They're killing too many people."
Did you ever, and I Pete Conlon, I'm going to borrow his line here. Did you ever have any nails in the dashboard moments with John when he was driving?
Oh, yeah.
I've heard it.
Yep.
Oh, man.
That's it. And they told me, "Don't let him drive." We're going down one street for a job. We were just on patrol, and there was a double parked car. And we're driving the REP. And he's like, "John, relax." And John was strong.
Yeah.
I was like surprised he did not snap that steering wheel. And then, going on the job with lights and siren, I'm like, what did I do to deserve this? Those were nail bites. Great guy. Great guy.
Great guy. I wish I would have got him on this show. And unfortunately, aren't with us that I would have loved to have spoken with. And it's funny because Danny Cohn, who worked with him for a time in 2 Truck, I always tell the story. There was a job. It was Danny's first job in emergency, mind you, when he got there in 1998. It was an elevator job. And they were going lights and sirens to a stuck elevator. And I asked him, I'm like, what were you thinking on your way down on the job? He's like, all I'm thinking about is how, oh my God, I'm going to get killed. I'm going to get T-boned on my way to an elevator job of all things. Because he was like, I love John, but he was like a dyslexic driver. He would stop at greens. He would go at reds.
He
But
was good.
he was great, E-Man. And again, really, and it was amazing with him. He knew so much about the RMI. I mean, imagine you could just sit back and just let him tell you about it all day.
He was originally it was Joe Needlehands
Yep.
and Al Baker that started the project, and then when they brought the RMI to tow truck, he was in charge of it, and then he wound up revising the whole manual for the operation of the thing, which I was amazed because every time I came into tow truck, because he was in the third squad, that RMI was out. He was doing something. He was on top of his baby. Do not mess with his baby, or that was it. That RMI was his baby, and he kept that in tip-top shape.
Yep.
And he made it easier with rewriting that manual to learn how to operate it.
Yeah.
Good man. Very, very intelligent. Very intelligent. Because he was a teacher before.
Yeah. And he was very fit, as you said. There was a great story with him from Don Sadawi, who maybe you crossed paths with in the bomb squad on jobs. Donnie was telling me one time, I think him and Steve Berberich, his partner in the bomb squad, were trying to lift the bomb robot back into the truck. And these guys at the time, they were fit enough to where they could do it, but it's a big robot, so it's taking them a lot to get it in there. And John just looks at him because they had, tow truck had responded to this particular job. He's like, guys, I got it. By himself, just dead lifts it and puts it right back in the truck.
Mm-hmm.
And how big that robot is.
Yes, and John was a strong man, very strong.
Very strong.
Because he used to compete in bodybuilding back in the day before he became a police officer.
Yep. By the way, before I continue, Pete Segretti's watch. He says, "Great guy, one of the best."
Hey, Pete, I love you, buddy.
Good man, Pete. Now, before I get to you going to Ford Truck in 2000. One of the many things about ESU, and I remember asking this to one of the guys who's working now, a guy at 3 Truck, Tony Otero. I was like, what are some of the more memorable details you've had? Because you get concerts, you're in the Bronx, you probably went to Yankee Stadium for playoff games, and even if you're not a sports fan, it's such an electric atmosphere. And during that time, I love that time because 96 to 2000, this is the dynasty year. So you get 4 World Series in 5 years, including the Subway Series against the Mets in 2000. Tell me about how cool those details were during those Yankee playoff runs.
Well, we weren't lucky to be on the sniper team because they were inside the stadium, so we were outside. You were hearing it in the crowd. But it was, I'm not a Yankee fan, but it was just amazing just listening to the crowd outside, and then after the game, everybody coming out, everybody had their little taste and all that, but it was good to see happy people, period. Enjoy themselves, and it was good. It was good. A couple of times we were able to get in there. We were in the bullpen, but other than that, it was just outside, doing the perimeter. I didn't mind it. The papal visits. That was fun because we were like, I think Pope Francis went to John Paul.
Yeah, was this 95 with UN 50?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think they were doing the mass over at Aqueduct.
Yeah.
So we're on the other side of the racetrack and we're looking through the binoculars, and I'm like, we got to call the fashion police. And I said, why? I said, he's got brown shoes on. I always thought they wore white shoes. I never knew. Being a Catholic, had everybody like, oh, somebody call the fashion police. But papal visit was nice. It was good. I remember one UN detail when Fidel Castro came. They were at the UN, and now he's going to Larry King. He's going to do the Larry King show. So here it is. The lieutenant points out to me, and I can't remember who was with us, but it was 5 other cops. So now we have to go down right across from Madison Square Garden on 8th Avenue between 33rd and 34th Street to set up a perimeter for Castro. I'm like, how the heck are we gonna do this? And it was 6 of us. It was one big truck, a big truck, and 2 REPs. So now I have to call, I think Midtown South covered that, and get a supervisor over here, and we have to get cops over there to stop people from coming by. So I said, how am I going to set this up? How are we going to set this up? So what we did was we took 1 lane of traffic, put the big truck on the 2nd lane from in front of where CNN was. So we're out there, got 2 guys with long guns across the street, got the precinct blocked to make sure no civilians come up and down the block. And I'm standing there with Mini 14. So the car pulls up, boom, boom. So this way nobody could see him going in. Let me tell you, that was a tall man. I was like,
So I've heard.
Friendly also. He said, he told me in Spanish, because he said, my gracia. I said, no problem. I said, told him, you're welcome. He gave me a pat on the shoulder. I was like, ooh. But that impressed me. I seen pictures of him and all this on TV, but to actually meet him in person, that was wild.
That brings us to Ford Truck going there in 2000. And I imagine, listen, you retired in 2002, as we'll talk about momentarily, but was that going to be the truck? I mean, listen, after working in 2, after working in 3, not counting the days when you would fly, was that going to be the truck you were going to finish your career out of?
Yes. Well, I would have finished my career in 3 truck.
Mm-hmm. So you wanted to go back?
We will talk off air on that one.
That's fine. No, don't say it on the air. But, I didn't know. My bad.
No, it's nothing wrong. It's I would have liked to retire out of 3 truck, but 4 truck was great. Steve Driscoll, Sergeant Coughlin, Kevin Donahue, Franco, Mike Ryan,
Stevie Lanos.
Yeah. Steve Lanos. Oh boy, good boy.
Shanene.
We had who else? Oh my God, Glenn O'Donnell, Tony Johnson, John McClure. That was Mother. He helped design a lot of the trucks. And that was a great crew up there. Fun. Keith Broderick. Who else? Tommy Bender. Oh, that was a fun crew up there. Always laughing. Bobby Steinman. Evan Schwerner. Good crowd up there. I was happy when I went up there. A little further travel, but it was good. Like I said, I would have stayed, but I just, after 9/11, I just physically and mentally got burnt out. And I just had it. I couldn't take it anymore. Going down to the pit, and you really couldn't do anything because you weren't going to find anybody. You were down there even trying to find something to bring closure to the families. And it just broke my heart. I came home one day and I said that was it. I called my wife. I told her I'm packing it in. I can't take it anymore.
That day, I was gonna say that day. When did you get down there?
It was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah. And the funny thing was, up on the street level, it would be so cold, but you were down there. It was warm. It was like summer, like a summer day down there. And I was off that day. I was working on my car. The phone was ringing, and come in, they hang up. Come in, they hang up. I took it outside. It was my sister-in-law. And she says, "Where's Millie? Where's Carmen?" I said, I dropped her off at work. No, you're not watching the news. I said, no. She said, a plane hit the World Trade Center. With that, I turned the TV on. There's a second plane hitting the South Tower. I said, oh, God. I hung up the phone, and I get the call from the desk. Go up to the truck and just stand by there. I said, first things first. I went up to Cardinal Spellman. I picked up my daughter, brought her home, and her girlfriend. I said, you don't move here until you hear from your mother. My wife was working at the Citibank in Long Island City, One Court Square. And from her window up on the 41st floor, she saw the second plane hit the South Tower. So she didn't get home because her boss said, Carmen, come with me. You go to our house. Her husband came, picked her up, and she didn't get back here to the Bronx because everything was closed down till when they reopened the bridges, I think till 2 o'clock in the morning. That's when she finally got home. And after that, I didn't see her at all for 3.5 months because of the hours I worked.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so hard because, listen, you knew the guys in 2. You knew John. You worked with John. I'm sure you knew Joe and you crossed paths with him and Sergeant Curtin, who was originally a 7 truck guy before he went to 2 later on. You know, obviously working in 3, you knew Wally and Vinny, who was flying at 2 that day, and Jerome. And working in 4, you had Steve Driscoll and you had John Coughlin. So it's a lot of good guys. And that's not counting the guys in Brooklyn in 7 and 8 and 10 who lost their lives that day too. Yep. You know,
Ronnie, Santos.
Yep.
Santos. Oh, I loved him.
I have to tell a story about Santos because there was this, Paul Yerk told me this story. One time, this is like right a little bit before Paulie went to the bomb squad, that it was the summertime. And you remember how Santos, Santos was a very hairy guy for those that don't know.
Oh, yeah. And
Paul's kids came up to him because this was like July, August. So this is like the sweltering months of the summer. They're like, Dad, you got to see this guy. It's 95 degrees out. He's wearing a sweater. They were little, so they didn't know.
Yes.
So Paul had to explain to him, no. He's a very hairy gentleman. But him and Ronnie, though, I've heard him and Ronnie were like polar opposites, but opposites attract, right? Because Ronnie was like really into fitness and keeping in shape, or like Santos was like, what's that for?
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Good guys. So before I get to retirement, I just want to go back for a second. And I remember saying this to Franco. I feel like the year 2000 was kind of the apex of ESU around that era because the guys that had come over from the merge, the transit rescue guys, the housing rescue guys, they're still there. Not a lot of guys that left. And even guys that had time they stuck around. So you're combining all that expertise that those guys had in housing and transit into the expertise of ESU. And I really felt, no disrespect to any of the prior eras or the guys that are doing it now, that might have been the best era of ESU, 95 to 2000. You'd gone through the Y2K prep, you'd made it through that, and it's a well-oiled machine. It was at the peak of its powers, I feel, around that time.
I thought so. It's, because there were, certain things that transit brought over that maybe we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
We learned from them. They learned from us. And it was the same thing with housing. There were certain things that they didn't know, and they learned with us, and we learned from them about stuff, elevator jobs, train jobs with transits. And, they had the transit keys, they had the elevator keys, and, because we used to have to go out and get the elevator keys ourselves over at the elevator company over by Yankee Stadium.
Right.
And, it was learning. We taught each other, and it was a good mesh. It was good. I had fun with all of them. I was... especially, with Joe Guerra and Rodell Glover and all the housing guys. They were great. They were great. I got assigned. I was assigned to Joe when he got shot. I was going in for my midnight that night, and I was told to go to Kings County Hospital to take his wife home, and then I got assigned to him to his doctor's appointments and all that.
Right. And thankfully, he made it through that, as he talked about on this show. So I think, before I get to the concluding segment, you retire in 2002. You mentioned why you were burnt out, understandably. But as you were telling me off the air, you've kept working. Do you feel the fact that you didn't sit around for too long, that you've stayed active in the workforce, I mean, especially immediately after that day. Do you feel like that kind of was therapeutic in a sense?
Yeah, it was. It's like I said, I came down with the prostate cancer from 9/11,
Mhm.
and after that, I didn't really let anything stress me out. And I just took it in stride. I said, all right, this is what's been written for me. And we'll just take it one day at a time. This is how we're going to deal with it. Have the surgery, have it removed, and then follow up with the doctor and go from there. And like I told you before, my daughter, she's a New York State trooper. And 2 years ago, she suffered a brain aneurysm.
Mm-hmm.
And that really hit me hard. I thought I was going to lose her. But, thank God to the head neurological surgeon over at the Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. He saved my baby. And with the prayers from everybody and the support from Rima, active and retired, that pulled me through. Mike, I was in a dark place. I didn't know what to do, but I had to be strong for her. And I had to be strong for my wife and my son. And whenever I was alone, I lost it. I just started crying, just praying. New York State Police, they were great to me. 2 truck was on standby if I needed anything. 4 truck was on standby. Everybody in emergency was on standby. Everybody helped us. ESU ambulance if I needed anything. Everybody was there for me. And I thank them all. Because without them, I couldn't have pulled through. I could not have pulled through this without them and their support and their prayers.
How's she doing these days?
She's doing good. She's off the road now. Thank God she didn't have to do any therapy. They caught it in time, and the neurologist, the surgeon told my wife she saved her own life, being that she's an EMT also. And she noticed the symptoms. And she's off the road. She's working down at their headquarters. She's dispatching now. So
Good.
she's doing great.
And that's a tough job, so I give her a lot of credit. Talk about that's really working the mind for anybody. That dispatch job, to remember all that information in such a short amount of time, get it out like that. That's a special breed right there. So good on her. Good on her.
That's my baby. I'm very proud of her. I don't think I could have done the academy that they do.
No, that makes 2 of us, my friend.
Okay, coming home on the weekends.
Yeah, that's tough. It's tough, but that's a unique job because you have the city, but then people forget New York State is a whole different ballgame. It ain't just the 5 boroughs. It ain't just Long Island. There's so much in that state. Remember, this goes all the way to Canada. You could be working in a troop in New York City. You can go work in a troop in Buffalo. You just don't know. So a lot to do. Before I get to the concluding segment, and Eugene, I don't know if you were in ESU yourself, but if you were, you have my email in the description of this video. Get a timeline of your career over if you were, and even if you weren't, I'm still interested. He wants to know, do you have any Tommy Langone stories?
Not really. We worked opposite squads whenever I flew the 10 truck.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember correctly, I think Tommy was in my SDS class, and they had broken our SDS class into 3 squads. So, but I think he was in the 1st or 2nd squad we were in STS. But I used to see him a couple of times over at 10 truck. We're on details. Great man. Oh, good guy. Miss him.
There was a funny story with him. I think Steph told this, and I think Glenn Klein affirmed this when he was on the show, that Tommy went gray at a very early age, and the guys would kid him about that. He's like, better gray than nay, as if to say better to have his hair, even if it was gray, than to have no hair at all. And he was right. A couple of pictures, actually. I don't want to get to the concluding segment yet without showing these pictures. And we'll go. I showed the STS one, the Academy one, but I think it's appropriate. This is your baby when she was a little bit little, or she was very little, I should say.
I did not see it coming at all. That's when I was 6.
Yep. And then this is her now.
God bless her.
Yep. And this is a job. Well, tell me about this one, actually.
Henry and I got a jumper these are the buildings over the Cross Bronx Expressway. So we pull up, look up, we see the guy standing there. Oh, God. We're going to have a good one. We get up to the roof, to the parapet, and we're trying to talk to the guy. The 3-4's already there. They said, he's not answering. And somebody said, he's deaf. We're like, what? Now we have to find somebody to do sign language. And we were waiting like a half hour. So Henry and I are putting all the racket belts on, tying in, and trying to figure a way. So Henry would distract him on one side, and then I would sit on the ledge or put one leg up there and we were up there for a while, and there was a crowd down. Traffic was stopped on the Cross Bronx, and Rescue 3 and the fire engine and the ladder company, they're all hanging outside the firehouse, 181st. And for a while there, we thought he was going to do it because he was like, don't come near me. Because I tried to give him a pen and paper, but he wouldn't take it. Finally, we were able to distract him when they were talking, doing sign language with him, and pin him against the wall and bring him over. That was a fun one. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that one.
Well, it worked out well.
But we got him. We got him. And took him to the hospital, got him the treatment that he needed.
And then there's this one, you and the Hearst tool.
Yeah, that's Pete Conlon right there.
Yeah, it is, working that mustache.
Yeah, that was a pin job on 116th Street and First Avenue. We were coming in on the midnight shift.
Yeah, good man, Pete. Of course, been on the show for Volume 20. There we go.
That's
Who's this with you
me
now?
and Bobby. That's Bobby Bierman and I. They 3-0, I think, hit a drug den, and they wanted us to open a safe for them, and we did.
Successfully, mission accomplished. And then these next two, you and Mr. Medina, as well as another gentleman on the bridge.
On the Rand behind me.
Okay.
We're doing training on the GW bridge.
What an angle! And then here's Henry with the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
I love going up on the bridge. Anytime we had training on the bridge, I was there.
So you mentioned Ronnie Watson earlier, and it's funny because he told me a story one time. I had a jumper job. It was on the GW, and it was a summer day, and they were up there for 4 hours. And eventually, they got the guy down. He didn't go through with the action, which is good. They saved his life. But he was saying in the middle of negotiating with them, he's like, "Wow, man, here's a really beautiful view up here." That was. You'd rather not be up there under those circumstances, but hey, it's the city from a different angle. It's quite the view.
The one bridge that I wanted to do that I never got to do because I know the cable span's a little steeper than the GW was the Verrazano. I never got a chance to go up on that one.
Okay. Well, you went up on the other ones though, and that's good enough. Listen, one's good enough for me. I remember, I think it was in Rush Hour 2. They were Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker were climbing up some Chinese bamboo on the side of a high rise in I believe it was Hong Kong. And sure enough, Chris Tucker sees a guy fall down. He's like, he's about to start climbing. He's like, oh hell no! He takes the stairs. So, I don't know how you guys did that, but hey, it takes a special bunch. And
I love going over the side, on the bridge jobs.
Man, it's something special.
I said, okay, I'll go up. we had one time. The guy was in the Jersey Tower, so I have my rackets on, and there was nowhere to tie up to. Going up, I'm climbing the beams, going up, and it was like a 4-foot jump into the tower where he was at the other side. So now I get him. I'm talking to him. He's calm. Port Authority has the traffic stopped, Jersey bound. All of a sudden, some news reporter comes up there with a camera and his team, and the guy starts bugging out. And I'm like, little help, please. Somebody come up. Because the sergeant was already on my case. Ray, tie in. I said, there's nothing for me to put the carabiners on. I just got up there. And finally somebody came in and he started battling, and we had to put the cuffs on him. We put him in a body bag and we lowered him and said, we're going to bring you down like a man, but this is the way. He's like, no, but we got him down.
Joe Malika has a question, actually, man. This is a good one. I do want to highlight this before we get to the rapid fire. There was a job in the mid-'90s, I think it was like 1994, when a guy called in to Howard Stern, and this is like when Howard Stern was at the peak of his powers, and was the most listened to radio show in America by far, and he was threatening to jump. Now, I don't know I remember this story. I don't know what bridge he was threatening to jump off of, but emergency service did get him. Do you know which truck it was? Were you on that one?
No, I wasn't on it. I heard of it, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, I got to look up whoever it was that handled that. Thank you, Joe, because I forgot about that one. But that is an interesting story involving ESU. Anyway, we are at the hour 45 mark. By the way, Garrett Cole has successfully aggravated me, gave up a home run, but the game is tied at 1 because the Yankees got right back on the board. Thank you, Harrison Bader. So, Garrett Cole, sir.
Yeah, see what the Rangers.
Right. Last I checked, they were scoreless against Tampa, so hopefully in June they can make me a very happy man. And Billy Kennedy says, great interview. Ray's a very modest guy and legend in ESU. He also, I should say, was always the first one to step up and help with cops and civilians in need. Proud to call him my friend. That from, of course, Billy Kennedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you. I love you.
So good man, Bill Kennedy. And, let me just say now, listen, I treated you with kid gloves for the first hour 45. Now we're going to take things up a notch with the rapid fire. And it's 5 hit and run questions from me, 5 hit and run answers from you. You could say pass if you want. Are you ready? So first, I was going to, what I'll ask is I'm going to switch one of them up, but coolest job you ever responded to?
Coolest job. I think it was, oh, God. I'm going to have to pass on that one.
Off the air. You'll tell me off the air. On details, whenever you were on a detail, I don't know if you ever had a celebrity interaction or somebody notable. What was the coolest celebrity you ever met?
We were in the cat car. Bill Clinton was president. So we're parked across the entrance where the Beast was parked for him, his limousine.
Right. So
I'm looking, and the lieutenant's with us. Say, hey, look, it's President Clinton. Said, oh. So he's talking to somebody from his staff, and he was ripping the guy a new one. I don't know what happened. I rolled the window down. Hey, Quick Willie, how you doing, Lieutenant? What should he doing? And the president said, hey, how are you, officer?
Man, that's something. He used to drive guys crazy on his detail because he would go up, and they're obviously trying to make sure no whack job up there with the sniper rifle takes him out. He would shake every hand. He'd stop. He'd get off the motorcade. And that's great for him. But the guys in Secret Service would be like, oh, yeah. Understandably, because that's their job right there. That's their one job. That's their bread and butter. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a good one. Third, I'm going to switch it up. I was going to ask you funniest call you ever went on, but you mentioned you're a Mets fan, and my condolences on the recent wild card debacle there against the Padres. But top 5 favorite Mets of all time.
Gil Hodges.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him play in 62. That was the first game my father took me to at the Polo Grounds. My dad and my grandpa were Brooklyn Dodger fans. Ed Kranepool. Jerry Grody, Tom Seaver, and Keith Hernandez.
Yeah, well, Keith is great. He finally got his number retired, deservedly, by the Mets. I got to say, of all the jerseys, I'm a Yankee fan, but I don't hate the Mets. I love the Mets black jerseys. Of all the jerseys I have in my closet, there's only 3. One's a Mark Messier, one's an Aaron Judge. Believe it or not, I have a Ray Ordonez jersey in there.
Oh, yes. We were on a detail at Shea Stadium, and I was on the field, and I can't remember if it was Joe Ditto or Jeff Ditto. They're twins. As I used to say, it's a good Ditto and a bad Ditto. So he brought a Little League ball to get autographs. Give me that thing. So I wound up getting 11 autographs. Ray Ordonez was one of them. I'm in the dugout talking with Ricky Rojas and Edgardo Alfonso. Yeah. So they're telling me, listen, you better give him pointing to Ordonez, a PBA car for the number of times he's always getting pulled over for speeding.
Yeah, those Met teams, man, those 1999, 2000 Met teams, they were really, really good, man. And Ray was a heck of a fielder. Alfonso, Piazza, Olrud, those were some really good ball clubs, man. Very talented clubs, good clubs. Al Leiter, and of course, let me see here. Fourth favorite bar or restaurant in New York City.
Favorite restaurant, the Lobster House on City Island. Lobster House and Sammy's.
I'm gonna check that out next time down in the Bronx. And fifth and finally, when you look back on your career, what are you proudest of?
I'm proud that I gave it my best. Yeah. I didn't slack. If I didn't know, I asked a question. I asked them to teach me, and I did the best that I can do. And I was proud of my career. I was very proud of what I did.
As you should be. As you should be. Well, this was great. Stick around. We'll say goodbye off the air. Any shout outs to anyone or anything that you want to give?
Everyone in Rima, active, retired. I love you all. And Patty, Billy, Patty, the whole lot of you. Right here in my heart always. I love you.
Shout out to all the people that tuned in tonight. Thanks, guys, as always. And shout out to Rima, too, by the way. And Tony Cuccia especially, I have to thank him because I asked him, like, I know you have to pay membership fees for that. He's like, it's on the arm. I'm like, yeah. So there we go, Tony. Not that I asked, but,
the person we missed tonight that I didn't see was Steffi.
Yeah, usually, I tell you, he pops up in the chat. He pops up. He'll usually appear and make some wisecrack, but I guess he's busy.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe he's busy tonight on the night tour in 10 truck, or waiting for Islander season to start up, as well. He's a big Islander fan. So shout out to Steph when he does inevitably watch the replay of this episode. And I'm looking now just to see if he's in there, and he's not. So he missed it. You missed out, Steph.
You, buddy.
Good man, Steph. Coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast, it's going to be an interesting show, volume 32. Of the best of the bravest interviews with the FDNY Elite. That's Friday. Battalion Chief John Sulka will join me for that one. And then for volume 23 of the E-Man, this is next Monday. I'm working to confirm it, but I think we're still on. He was in the chat earlier. You'll see him finally on this show, Patty Pogan. So that's going to be a really good show with Patty. Interesting stories with him. I've heard off the air, and I look forward to hearing on the air as well. That laugh says it all, Ray. I know I'm in for a good show with Patty. It's going to be a good one. So, like I said, on behalf of Ray Ruiz, I'm Mike Colón. Ray, stick around. We'll say goodbye off the air. And we will see you next time. Garrett Cole, I don't like you. Go Rangers and go Yankees. Take care, guys. Good night.